How's it going, everybody? Just doing a good old video game ramble here today. Rambling whatever pops up in my head about video games. Got some Genesis cases to tap on as well. These are still, in my opinion, the best game cases of all time. The tab has been cut off. This is actually my original case and manual for Echo the Dolphin from back in 92. The game I picked up like last month, that is not the original. This is still the coolest case, the checkerboard pattern here and stuff. Looks great on a shelf, it's almost like a book. Also have Sports Talk Baseball and the first FIFA. All those, the Sports Talk is actually my original game. FIFA isn't the case and the manual is, but I picked up that game. No, I guess it has been a while now. I love the Genesis board games. The 16-bit board games and even the 8-bit are probably my favorite. I still played sports stuff after that, but not to the extent of back then. My friends and I would still play NHL. Well, after NHL 94 specifically. That Sports Talk and Lakers vs. Celtics. I love those. A lot of them hold up too. I don't think the old Maddens from the Genesis era hold up as well. NHL still hold up. Sports Talk Baseball still holds up. My friend and I were playing that maybe like a month ago. And the Lakers vs. Celtics series, Bulls vs. Lakers, Bulls vs. Blazers, all hold up pretty well also. Here comes the cat. You can hear her too. We've been, I don't really want to ramble about the cat, but she's getting old and at the end of the line. I played a lot of ESPN NFL 2K5 was awesome. I played some of the MLB 2K5 as well. 2K5 was probably the last sports game I put a lot of time into. That was fun. I'll leave that door open, whatever. I love the we used to play FIFA tournaments as well. We used to play NHL 94 tournaments, NFL Stanley Cup. I've talked about this, I'm sure, in other video game related videos. We used to have FIFA tournaments also. The first FIFA. Really cool game as well. There's always a funny thing because the crowd would do like chants in the game, and the one always sounded like, "We pay all the rent." That's what it sounded like they were saying. We pay all the rent. She's laying in front of the bed, I think. She's got like a massive, massive bump that's just grown so ridiculously, and it makes her like a breathing. Sometimes she'll struggle a little bit to breathe, but like when she purrs, it's really loud. Sometimes there's a lot of noises that now come from that thing, so we gotta be careful with it. We gotta make a decision soon, though. They do at home. Well, they'll come, put the animal to sleep, so we're gonna try to probably do that. The question is when, because she's still like, she's not miserable, that's the thing. Like sometimes you can tell she's a little bothered by it, and it definitely makes her uncomfortable, I'm sure, but She's still eating and drinking and everything like that. She's losing weight too, so she's just also other things just because she's old. But now she's walking around. I don't even want to pick her up. Resident Evil 4 remake comes out end of March. I was watching some gameplay of that. They added side quests apparently in this one, which is really cool. I'm excited for that. Thankfully, it's on the PS4, so I'll pick it up on that. I don't know if it's just going to be digital on the Xbox One or it's just not on the Xbox One and it's on the Series X. But, there she goes again. I'm excited for that. It looks good. It looks like they have tweaked stuff as well. They got rid of the quick time events as well, I believe, which is nice. So that's the game I'm really excited for. Dead Space remake as well, but that is not, I'm pretty sure it's not on the PS4 or Xbox One. I watched some video on that as well. Whenever I get across to getting one of the systems, the newer systems, I will definitely pick that up. I saw something about possibly like a PS4, a PS5 like Pro or like a Lite that has like an extra cooling thing in it or something. I don't know. Just a rumor. But I mean, it's funny with the remakes. I mean, they did such a good job with 2, especially Resident Evil 2 remake was amazing. I enjoyed 3 quite a bit. It was not as good as 2 because 3 absolutely changed it up. Like 3 was almost like an action movie. I actually liked it. It was much shorter than 2, which 2 and 3, the original versions, are actually very short. But 2 was longer than 3 was. I want to see him give the Code Veronica that same like remake. But I enjoyed 3. It just wasn't nearly as good as the 2, the remake of 2. But 4 looks great. 4 is an amazing game. I played that in VR too. I talked about that at some point. And 4 in VR is amazing. It was one of the best experiences I had with the game. It was awesome. I would love to see them just bring all those older Resident Evils into VR. 5. I don't consider 5. I consider 5 action horror, not survival horror, but I actually love Resident Evil 5 quite a bit. I stopped playing Phobia, at least for the moment, because I got up to this boss, like a spider boss, and I had my health almost at the top, but I had no additional healths. I only did it like 3 times. Did I talk about this already in a video? I think I did. And it was annoying because the controls are just so, for a boss fight, the controls are so bad. I was like, I can't deal with this right now. I'll go back to it because I do enjoy that game, so I'll just tough it out and figure it out and beat that boss and move on. But and I started playing some Fallen Order again, Jedi Fallen Order. Say Hogwarts Legacy comes out next month for the PS5 and Series X and Series S. I think it got delayed for the Xbox One and PS4, which is not a good thing that the other ones are coming out and that one's getting delayed. That means there's probably severe performance issues. That's not a game I would probably pick up on there. I would just wait to get it whenever I got the system. It looks cool though. I watched a demo on that as well. You know, kind of exploring off the grounds and stuff. It's very open worldy. I think you can like build your own stuff as well. They showed the person flying on the broom. A lot of it looked pretty cool. The whole Genesis. How great would it be if Sega was like, listen, and you could do this, and there's probably a bit of a market for it, honestly. some of these other older school. They try to make like older school consoles, and they either just don't come out or end up being scams, or they're just not that good. Like how great would it be if Sega was just like, you know what? We're gonna not even. They don't even have to. They're just like, listen, you kind of have to because not a lot of people. I'm sure a decent amount of people still have a Sega Genesis, but like they just released another Sega Genesis and started making 2D games again for it. Would be so cool. It's funny when, and this goes for anybody, no matter what era you started playing games. And like I said, me, the NES was the first one I got in '87. I think I was 7 years old. I hadn't turned 8 yet. I think I was still 7. I had Atari 7800 as well, but I think that was around the same time. I don't know if I had any earlier Ataris. Because I could have had maybe like a 5200 or something, but I cannot remember. And I had like Commodore 64 and stuff as well, which was awesome. I think I talked about this at some point. I'll get back to what I was just about to talk about in a second, but I used to have, because the Commodore had its own monitor, so I had the Commodore like in one area of my room. I had my normal, whatever, it was like a 19-inch tube TV with whatever hooked up to it, maybe at the time I'd been NES or a Super Nintendo or the Genesis, and then I had a smaller 13-inch TV that I would have a system occasionally hooked up into, and then my friends would come over, and we would like cycle and each play like one of the things for a little bit, and then move on to the next one. That was good memories. This might have been before Super Nintendo. I might have had the Genesis, because Genesis came out like 2 years before Super Nintendo. But as I was saying before, no matter what era you started playing games in, when you're a kid, and even for me, even when I was up until like the GameCube, Xbox, PS2 era, so well, the PS2 came in, well, even the Dreamcast, for that matter, Dreamcast would have came out when I was 20, 21 for the PS2, and then 22 for the GameCube and Xbox. And it still felt classic, like getting a game for those systems back then when you're younger means more. It's crazy when like you have the money to throw around at games. It doesn't mean as much because you're getting so many of what you need. You're still enjoying them, but like I remember, when I got the GameCube and I got Madden 02, and then I got Rogue Squadron, Rogue Leader, Star Wars Rogue Squadron, Rogue Leader, the second one. I was just like, yes, this is awesome. And I would get games from time to time, like Simpsons Road Rage, Agent Under Fire. Eventually Eternal Darkness, when that came out, in the Resident Evil remake. And they just meant more back then, I think. When you got a new game, especially back when you were a kid, and Christmas, your birthday would come around, or if you get a game in between, even if you just got it yourself, you're saving up money from doing whatever, chores or whatever. And like I said, the experience of going to Toys R Us back in the day and having to pull the slip out and bring it up to the thing, and then it would be Christmas time, and you would think a game was sold out, but it wasn't, because everybody just took the slips out to bring home. I remember looking in that room. It was like a small room that you go up to like a window, and you'd look in there, and there was just ceiling to floor games for every system that was out at the time. You were like, I want to get in there for 2 minutes. Give me 2 minutes with a shopping cart, and I would just be like, but yeah, TurboGrafx as well. Like I remember a few with the TurboGrafx 16 and the Super Nintendo. I had gotten a game for it before I got the system, and my dad. I remember this. My dad wasn't. My mom and dad are already divorced, but my mom let him keep. He had an old 39 Lincoln Zephyr. It didn't run, but he's like, "Oh, I need to leave it somewhere." So I was like, "All right, you can leave it in the driveway," because we had an extra 2-car driveway. And my aunt would park in the driveway, and my mom would usually park on the street. And so she's like, yeah, whatever. And we used to hang out. My friends used to hang out in this thing. Because it was huge. This thing was made of steel, too. It was huge. Like, this thing would cut through, like, those big, like those Ford F-150s, those big, trucks you see. With the, whatever. The Charger, not Charger's not a, whatever the Dodge makes. Ram. Those things are big. This Lincoln Zephyr A was almost the closest size of that thing, and this thing would probably cut one of those in half. This thing was just like if someone wanted to kick a dent in your car now, they could, and it wouldn't hurt. If you tried kicking that thing, you'd probably break your foot. But anyway, we used to hang out there, and I remember I got China Warrior for, not a good game, by the way, for the TurboGrafx, and me and my friend would hang out in the old Lincoln, and pop open, look through the manual and stuff, and then F-Zero was another one I had before I got the Super Nintendo. It was always fun looking through the manuals and stuff. That's something you lose now. You have no manual to look through, And I understand why they do it. It's like, whatever, just save the paper or whatever. You can do a manual online. Every once in a while, you'll actually get some kind of manual. It's very rare now. N64, I remember getting N64 games and just, I kept the boxes for the N64 games. I never used to keep the Super Nintendo or NES boxes. Genesis, I obviously would keep the case because it was a case to hold the game. I think I learned because I was older. I was like, I'm going to keep these N64 boxes. Which the funny thing is, I sold some of my N64 games and still kept the boxes for them. And the manuals, I was just like selling the games to maybe friends or whatever. Or like to GameStop. I'm not about to give them the box. I actually sold some of those on eBay a while back. Kind of wish I kept them, but whatever. N64 was great, just getting games for that thing too. And when first, like I talked about first seeing Mario 64 and just I was like, even my mom, it was funny. I think I've told this story too. We had, had a newer tube TV, and it had the component cables or whatever, the composite cables things, the red, white, and yellow. And I never had that on the N64, the Super Nintendo Genesis. All the other systems, I used the RF thing. You plug into the back of the TV, twist into the back of the TV, screw it in. And we heard it, but we couldn't see it because we didn't realize we have to change the input. And we called the person. The person's like, oh, we've been getting this call a lot because people aren't used to hooking the game systems up this way. You were able to on the Super Nintendo. It had the thing for it, and I think one of the model Genesis did as well. And we switched it over, and we're like, oh my god, like, me and my mom was like, wow, like, you were just like, you don't get that. For me, I don't get that. Like, it's amazing as graphics look now. Like, I'm like, oh, like, I'll look in the game back, damn, it looks good. But back then, it was so different when you were like, oh my god. Like, the games don't have that kind of impact on me visually like they did back then. Even when it went from Nintendo to Super Nintendo, you were just like, what? Even Xbox, PS2, GameCube, you'd still like Resident Evil remake them. When I put that out on the GameCube, it was just like, oh my god, like the character models of that game still holds up too. Because it has a still background, so those still look really good. And then the character models, those still look good. Jill, Chris, everybody, like Wesker, Barry, you're just like, wow. Like it was like Ninja Gaiden, when they put that on the Xbox, that was another one where you were like, holy shit. God of War, Shadow of the Colossus, another one. Silent Hill 2, like a lot of these games look just fantastic. Even like Rogue Leader, like I was like, oh my god, it's like playing the movie. Oh my goodness, I need to pick that game up again because it's a great game. That used to be like a $5 game used. It's probably like $25, $30 now, which still isn't that expensive. just go and you'd see this because they'd have the slip and then they have like a thing like this that would show like the front and the back. I'm pretty sure they'd have like maybe the artwork and a thing, and you kind of look at it. And you get a nice little story here. You are Echo 8 megs of aquatic excitement with password save. Only certain games you could save back then, especially on Nintendo. When the original Nintendo, you'd flip the cartridge and it would have the gold back. You knew you'd be able to save. That was few. Super Nintendo was more games that would save right onto the cartridge. And some games still used passwords. But Mario World saved. Stuff like that. The Final Fantasies and all the RPGs. Problem is those batteries over time will just eventually die. You can replace them, but you gotta do a little soldering and stuff. Pop the cartridge open. But yeah, I think everybody, like, whatever systems you grow up with, those are the ones like, yeah, you're just like, oh my god, like, it's like I remember like going to my friend's house in the Super Nintendo era, and he had Populous, and you're playing, you're like, what? I was like a SimCity type of game. I think that was developed by or he took, at least helped design it, was the guy who did the Fables. I forget his name, Peter Molyneux. But yeah, it's just that goes fighting a pterodactyl there, it looks like. Like I said, Sega always took chances. Here's your dolphin that you'll use. Even up until the Dreamcast as well, they were still coming out with stuff. Like even the Shenmue games were like so. A lot of people, though, that game's very like divided. Like people either love it or they can't stand it. It's like, this is boring. I used to love just, oh look, you got to do the forklifting thing now. Like it was kind of. I like that kind of stuff. Like I said, I don't even mind the walking simulators. I was playing that game Lake a while back. And just driving around delivering the mail and talking to people and little story beats and stuff. And it was just fun. I don't know. It's nice and relaxing. Just certain games and discovering things back when you were younger. I kind of wish part of me could just be like, I'm just going to play older stuff and that's it. I'm going to focus on old systems, screw the new stuff. But I do love the new stuff, Like, Resident Evil. I love the new stuff as I'm waiting for a remake of a game that came out in 2004. Or is it 2005? Actually, maybe it came out early. I think it came out January 05 for the Cube, and then it came out like a year later on the PS2. You sometimes feel that. You're like, oh yeah. And like Dead Space. I mean, I like when they do full remakes of older games and not a remaster of like a game that came out on the 360 or the PS3. I don't care about that. Give me a full remake of games that you can't just like be like, oh look, we up-resed it a little bit now. Like Shadow of the Colossus as well, looks great, that remake. But I always like the newer stuff, I was like, oh wow, like look at this, F-Zero, Burnout are like the only racing games I'm kind of really into. Like, I don't mind racing games. Like, I'll play some Need for Speeds, but I get bored fast. Burnout Paradise was when I played a ton of. I used to love the crash mode in the earlier Burnout games, and then they took it out, or they kept it, but it wasn't the same. And the F-Zeros was already fun. I think I talked about this once. The F-Zero on the GameCube was a GX. Was going so fast, I had to pause it because I was getting nauseous. It was just like, I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna puke. The colors, everything. That was a cool one. Cube's a great system. It's a shame it got third-party support, but it wasn't getting GTAs. PS2, but like, I mean, the Xbox eventually got the GTAs, but there's no Silent Hills on the Xbox, no Fatal Frames. I mean, on the GameCube, no Silent Hills, no Fatal Frames. I don't think they got even Cold Fear either. I mean, they got a decent amount of stuff, but not a lot of the more mature stuff. Like, they got Blood Omen 2, but they didn't get Defiance. They didn't get Legacy, gained Defiance. And they had the Resident Evils, they got Zero, they got the remake, they put out all the older ones on the GameCube disc, Code Veronica, 2, 3, and then they got 4. They had Eternal Darkness, which is awesome. They had another one, Geist, that was kind of cool as well, where you're a ghost and you're possessing all types of stuff. But they didn't really have any other survival horror games. They did get Star Wars Bounty Hunter, which was nice, and they got other Star Wars games. Like the PS2 didn't get some stuff because either the system couldn't handle it or they just didn't, but didn't matter. They got the Devil May Cry, the God of Wars, the Maximo games, Dark Cloud games, like they had everything. Like, if you look at any system over any generation, that system probably had like the best exclusive games for it. Like, you could easily sell that system just on its exclusives. Like, if you only had the PS2 in that era, you were doing fine. The only thing they didn't have they didn't have a ton of first-person shooters. They had them, but they weren't like Halo level. But I feel like, and they didn't have like a lot of the Western RPGs. Like, they didn't get a Morrowind and stuff like that. But they had all the turn-based stuff. The Shadow Hearts games, the Final Fantasies, Star Ocean. They had all types of RPGs for that system. Like, it was nuts. Survival horror games on that system. Oh god! Like, you could sit here and say like PC now and stuff. You can get so many survival horror games, but man, you're talking back then. The PS2 had the 3 Fatal Frames. They had all Silent Hills. They didn't have a ton of Resident Evils, but they ended up getting Code Veronica X. 4 did come to it, and they had the Outbreak games, which were interesting. You could play them solo, but they were meant to be played with other people online. They had Cold Fear. They had this game Ghost Hunter. They had Siren, Kuon, Haunting Ground, Rule of Rose. The Thing, and that was on the Xbox as well. You didn't get that. The Thing is an underrated, like, hidden gem, as people like to say, of a horror game. Such a good game. We have to like, oh my god, is someone The Thing? Like, it's great. It's a prequel to the movie, I think. I need to pick that up again on the Xbox. It's not that expensive. Really, really good game. And they got a ton more. I can't even remember. I'm sure I'm forgetting a ton of them. Clock Tower 3 was on there. Some of these games were fairly cheap, like 10 years ago even, and now they're like, the survival horror genre just... Finding those for even like $20 is a steal for some of them, because the Silent Hills in particular, it's gross. Like Silent Hill, the ones on like the PS2, it's like Silent Hill 2, 3, 4, like over $100. You go to the retro game store, it's like $100. Like, what the hell happened? Like, it happened overnight too with those games, man. It's like all of a sudden they're like $30, $40, $50. All of a sudden, like a month later, like $120. You're like, what? But like I said, there's other ones I'm missing, I'm sure. But they're like I said, the survival horror, man, just the Fatal Frames and the Silent Hills alone would be worth it. If you were into survival horror, you were getting pretty much everything you needed, except missing out on Zero and the remake. I'm talking about back then. Now those games have come out elsewhere, but back then, with the Cube, you get Eternal Darkness, some of the Resident Evils as well, but not enough, I think, to overpower the PS2 stuff. And the Xbox got some Fatal Frames. They got 2 and 3, 1 and 2. They got Silent Hill 2 and 4. They had Dino Crisis 3. There was another game, Extermination, on the PS2 as well. That was an older one. But you got more of that stuff back then. I mean, the Xbox, they had Call of Cthulhu, Dark Corners of the Earth. They had some of the stuff like Steel Immersive Devices, but they didn't get it. I mean, they got the. And this was also on the PS2. I had the first obscure, another underrated survival horror game. But they had Obscure, and then there was another one, The Aftermath. And I think they were both on both systems. Those are more expensive now, too. A cool game that I need to pick up for the Xbox. I never beat it. I had it, like, briefly in 2010. The Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the first one, was really cool. I never played the second one. There was a Chaos Bleeds. But that first one was really good. And I don't think that's overly expensive. It had the same combat. It was made by the same people who made Indiana Jones in the Emperor's Tomb. And it used the one thumbstick to kind of, for combat. You know, you're really grabbed by the ghoulies. Xbox game made by Rare. It's actually really good. That used the thumbstick they used like as an attack button. It actually worked fairly well. And you had the Manhunt games. But those were on the Xbox. Well, the first Manhunt was on the Xbox. That's a horror-ish game for sure. They'll never make a third one of that one. The controversy when that first game came out was nuts. And that game is brutal. Even to this day, too, you can go online and watch the execution scenes. Yeah, brutal, man. I don't think they'd be able to kind of get it. Maybe they would, but those execution scenes, like with the graphics now, would be almost too realistic because that game was brutal in a good way. It was just a good stealth game, though, as well. But yeah, I'm going to stop that here. That was a proper ramble. Didn't do as much tapping as I would have liked. I start rambling about stuff. I forget that the games are over there. But yeah, just a video game ramble. Just rambling about whatever. Actually, let me briefly go here. I'll ramble for a minute or two. I always forget to talk about the Sega CD in my rambles. I had the Sega CD and TurboGrafx CD too, but I only had one game, but that actually a good amount of games. This Sega CD. This cool game called Double Switch that Corey Haim was in. Very similar to Night Trap, where you had to set traps for the enemies and stuff like that at a time. And there's Ground Zero Texas. I think some of these games have re-released. There's Ground Zero Texas. I had Tomcat Alley, Prize Fighter, Sewer Shark. I had the Sherlock Holmes game, I believe. Oh no, I had that on the TurboGrafx. I didn't have it on the other one. What other Sega CD games to have? Sonic CD, which is really good. I still have the manual for a few of them, and I still have the manual for Mansion of Hidden Souls, which was a good game. I think it was called Mansion of Hidden Souls. I still have that one. Great system, the Sega CD, but it was very short-lived. There was not enough of an audience for the FMV games, and it falls apart after a while because it's not much of a game, you know. They still release stuff like Sonic CD, Final Fight CD. Traditional games still came out on it, but it got boring after a while. Like you play it for a bit and be like, "This is so cool," and then you'd be like, "I'm bored now." Anyway, yeah, that's a few minutes just talking about Sega CD because some of that like Night Trap and stuff could be considered horror games. But anyway, yeah, video game ramble here today, and thanks for checking this out.